Okay, so kind of an impromptu, all my videos are impromptu, topic here. I'm at Mayo Clinic. I'm in Rochester, Minnesota. So we got a little bit of a different background for you guys. But here's the deal that I'm going to talk about today is TRT and how it's, well, we all trust Big Pharma, right? So, you can look this up. I think the website was called something like Truth in Advertising. Low T is basically invented condition. Most people with low T actually don't have low T at all. They don't have low testosterone. They don't have primary hypogonadism. In fact, there's studies out there showing that something like 80% of people on testosterone replacement therapy don't actually have primary hypogonadism and therefore don't actually need to be on testosterone replacement therapy. But of course, it's sold as the panacea. It's a cure-all. Everyone's cool with it now. And I think it's weird because you'll hear lots of guys be like, I don't trust Big Pharma and I don't eat seed oils. And okay, but you're injecting yourself with seed oils and you're trusting Big Pharma and you've become a customer for life, because once you go on, there's no coming off. I know people will tell you that there is, but there isn't. You go on, your testicles atrophy, the Sertoli cells and Leydig cells atrophy and die. So when you come off, you're going to be lower than you were now. So, if you're at 350 and you go on, and then, the cells in your testicles die, and you think you're going to come off and be, 500? No. You'll be lucky if you're 200. So I don't know why people think you can just, I'm going to go on because I'm at 300 or I'm at 400. And now you're going to go on TRT, and then 5 years from now you're going to come off and somehow you're going to have normal levels. I mean, you're also 5 years older. So, anyways, the thing that really annoys me about this, though, is that TRT is not TRT. TRT has basically just become a code word for steroids. It's like saying, I'm just on TRT. And I find that to be very disingenuous and dishonest. It's like I got into it with Paul Carter once, and Paul Carter assured me that he's just on low-dose TRT, and I would be the exact same size as him and just as strong as him if I bought the exogenous ketones that he sells. And so then he tried to sell me Keto OS or something like that, telling me that his low-dose TRT is the only reason why he is as big as he is and as strong as he is. And if I just took the ketones, I would be just as big and just as strong as him, because he's only on low-dose TRT. And I know quite a few people in this industry who say they're on TRT. And then you talk to them and they're like, that's not low-dose at all. They're on 300 milligrams of testosterone or 200 milligrams of testosterone, which is now super physiological. And then, of course, then they take a whole bunch of other stuff with it. I mean, I know guys who tell me, I'm just on low-dose TRT, and then they're telling me about how they're taking Tren and Sustanon and all these other things like that. So I find it to be really disingenuous that people are like, I'm just on TRT. And then they blow up, and then you talk to them, and they're like, I use Anavar, and I use DECA, and, I also take, growth hormone, and, I'm on 300 milligrams of testosterone, and sometimes I blast, I take 500 a week for a while, and then I go back down to 200 as, my TRT dose, and it's like, that's not even a TRT dose. No doctor, no endocrinologist is going to tell you that having a testosterone level of 2,000 nanograms per deciliter is a TRT therapeutic level. That's ridiculous. It's lying. So, anyways, big long story short here. This is my thought for you, and I mean this. I don't intend to ever go on TRT. If I decide, hey, I'm done having kids, and I don't want to have kids, and I don't care what happens to my health, and, I reach that point where I just want to get as big as possible. I'm not going to go on TRT. I'm just going to go on steroids and tell you, hey, I'm taking steroids. Like, I'm not going to bullshit people and be like, I'm just on low-dose TRT. Wink, wink. And so then I start taking Sustanon and DECA and, oxandrolone and all these other things like that. No. Just go on steroids and call it steroids. Like, no one looks down on, oh, Ronnie Coleman, it's less impressive because he took steroids. Or, Dave Hoff, it's less impressive because he took steroids. It's not how it works. All of us, I assume you, if you're watching my channel, respect people like Dave Tate, John Meadows, Jim Wendler, Stan Efferding, Justin Harris. Do you care? Do you care that they use steroids? No, you don't. You're okay with it because they're honest about it. I mean, why do you get pissed off at Mike O'Hearn? Why are so many people mad at Mike O'Hearn? Because he fucking lies. People are like, oh, he's definitely on something, and then he's like, no, I'm lifetime drug-free. I've never touched anything in my entire life. I'm not even telling you that he's currently on, but there's probably a good chance that he tried something at some point. To be that big for that long, that strong, and I'm not making the accusation that I know for certain that he is, but it certainly is suspect. And so the reason why people get pissed off is because people feel like he's lying. John Hack. John Hack is, quickly becoming one of the greatest powerlifters ever. He doesn't bullshit people. He's like, yeah, like I used to be drug-free, and now I use drugs. Shane Hunt, another big one. Shane doesn't bullshit people. He fucking posts about his trend. Like, he openly admits that he uses tren. Do you respect him any less? Are you like, oh, no, I don't respect him. 1,000-pound deadlift isn't impressive if you use steroids. No. Do you care? Nick Walker? Big Rammy? No, you don't care, because they're open and they're honest about it. I think the problem is that you had a lot of people out there saying, I'm just on low-dose TRT. And they're completely dishonest, and that's the real problem. The problem isn't whether or not people use or don't use. I don't care if you're drug-free, and I don't care if you're enhanced. I don't care. It makes no difference to me. I'm going to continue listening to people who are, quote, enhanced, because they're intelligent. I don't care what Dave Tate takes or took. He knows what he's talking about, so I listen to him. So I don't care what Stan Efferding takes or took. He's intelligent, so I listen to him. Chris Tuttle, you should listen. You should pay attention when these people teach you something. Justin Harris, Paul Barnett. I don't care. Like, is the information correct? You don't seem to care about Mike Israetel. No one gets upset like, oh, well, Mike's completely bullshit because he uses steroids. People are like, no, Mike is really brilliant because whatever the fuck he said, right? And so my only point here is that, if I ever did this, I'm going to take steroids, but tell everyone it's TRT. No. Like, if I was ever going to do it, I would just be like, yep, I'm going to fucking take Deca and Primo and, 500 milligrams of testosterone. I don't think that changes anything. Let me change that statement. I don't think that changes whether or not your information is correct. So if I tell you, hey, 3 sets of 3 at 80%, and work up to a heavy single, then drop to 80% of that and do 3 sets of 3, that's a good way for you to build strength. Like, that's still a good way for you to build strength, whether or not you are drug-free or enhanced. Like, that's a good way for you to train. Like, you want to get strong, work up to a heavy single, and then drop off and do some volume, not even a lot of volume, like 3 sets of 3 at 80%, and you'll build strength. Whether or not someone is or isn't drug-free doesn't change whether or not their training advice is correct. You could have really bad training advice and be completely drug-free. I know plenty of people who are completely drug-free and they have horrible training advice. At the same time, don't get me wrong here, people who are on drugs can train stupid and still make progress because the drugs work. But at the same time, you do have people who train very intelligently and the drugs enhance that. So, you should evaluate the training information itself. Is this good information? Because there are plenty of people who are drug-free that have bad advice too. So whether or not your argument is correct is a different question than you as a person. It's like if I told you, oh, well, because I have a PhD, we're not going to discuss what my PhD is in, because I have a PhD, everything I say is correct. Well, how the fuck do you know that it's correct? Do I have a PhD in exercise, physiology, or do I have a PhD in neurobiology? Do I have a PhD in gender studies? But I have a PhD, so I can slap PhD at the end of my name, and suddenly everything I say is correct. No, it doesn't work that way. If you have a PhD, I don't even care if your PhD is in exercise phys. If you have an exercise phys PhD and you say something that's incorrect, it's still incorrect. Like, whether or not you have a degree in this area of discussion doesn't make you correct. There are people that have an MD and they say absolutely stupid things about medicine. So, having letters after your name doesn't necessarily make you an expert. There are lots of people that have their CSCS or their CrossFit level 2 or whatever, and they still say dumb shit. So, like, just having letters after your name doesn't make your argument automatically correct. You could have a PhD in physics and still say something that's completely asinine and incorrect. That doesn't make someone correct just because I have letters after my name or not. So the argument that someone makes should stand on its own, whether it comes from a person with a bachelor's or it comes from a person with a PhD or someone who just is a high school dropout. If they're correct, they're correct. And it shouldn't matter. And by the same token, it shouldn't matter if someone is or isn't drug-free. Whether or not their argument is correct is up to that single argument. You have to evaluate that argument, that claim. If I told you that the best way for you to build your squat is, taking a 50-pound dumbbell and squatting it for sets of 100, it doesn't matter if I have a PhD in exercise physiology. That's stupid. If I told you the best way for you to get your bench press up is to do thousands of push-ups, that's still incorrect. It wouldn't matter if I have a PhD and I'm a professor at some big school, and I'm the leading most published person in exercise physiology. If I tell you the best way to increase your bench press is to do thousands of push-ups, that's still bullshit. And that's what we need to focus on. We need to focus on the claim being made itself. And I really think that more people need to focus on the actual claim itself. Stop just believing someone because they seem like they're an authority. And just as, you shouldn't just listen to someone because they're fucking jacked. There's some dude at the gym who's fucking jacked. And it's like he does the dumbest training ever. Maybe he's genetically gifted. Maybe he's on drugs. You don't know. But what does matter is that you should be able to look at his training and say that is or isn't good training. And so, as I pointed out with this whole TRT thing, I find it very disingenuous that all these people make claims like, "Oh, I'm just on low-dose TRT. That's why I'm 5'8" and 275 pounds with 6% body fat." And it's like, we all know that you're not on low-dose TRT. You're lying. And I feel like that should be our real metric here. It's not about whether or not someone is or isn't on something. If Stan Efferding told you that he takes 600 milligrams of testosterone, his vertical diet is still a very good diet. It's still a well-structured diet. It doesn't make that negated whether or not he is or isn't on steroids. But what would make it bad is if he lies about that. If he was to lie and say, "I'm just on low-dose TRT," then how do you trust anything else that this person says or anything that this person sells? That's the real question you should ask yourself. So if I was ever going to do this, I would just go ahead and tell people, yeah, I'm on Tren and fucking, halo testing. You might as well just be honest about it, because at least if you're honest about it, people will respect you for your honesty. And then that tells you that this person is an honest person, even when they're wrong. They're wrong because it's an honest mistake, not because they're trying to fool you into something. And I think that that's a big difference. The intent is there. Is someone giving out bad information by accident? They actually believe this to be correct? Or are they giving out bad information because they're trying to sell you something? You should think about that. You should think about the character of the person that you're taking advice from. So anyways, that's my point for you, and I hope it's just something for you to think about. But like I said, all these guys out there, they call it, "Oh, I'm just on TRT," and just call it what it is. You're fucking doing steroids. You're using steroids. Just fucking own it. You sound like a pussy when you sit there and be like, "Oh, it's just low-dose TRT." Meanwhile, you're walking around at 275 pounds. It's annoying because everyone else sees through it, and yet somehow people feel like I don't know. It's like they feel the need to lie to people because what? I don't know, because it makes you a better person because you're lying? The logic isn't even there.